For more on medical tourism in China, I spoke to Pete Reed, CEO of Global Growth Markets. I started by asking what kind of treatment people are seeking in China.
At the moment, the traffic in terms of medical tourism going to China is quite the big volume for medical tourism is people leaving China to go to other parts of the world, and there's a variety of a whole range of treatments that people are going for, everything from health checkups to cosmetic surgery to dental work to more serious treatments for cancer and cardiac, for example.
Now, we know that a lot of Chinese tourists do go overseas, but in terms of boosting domestic demand, we know that local officials in the island of Hainan set aside about 1,600 acres of land for this $3 billion project to really try and make their own kind of medical tourism zone. How far do you think that will go to really boosting domestic demand for medical tourism?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, there's a big initiative to develop the medical tourism industry sector in Hainan, and particularly in the east part of the island in Boao. And I think that's a good initiative by the Chinese government because, of course, they would prefer to have people from China being treated in China as opposed to leaving their shores and spending their US dollars overseas, which is currently what's happening. So I think that will have an impact on the medical tourism traffic leaving China, but it will take some years to develop as it's a very new program at the moment.
Now, having more medical tourists come into a country obviously requires other things like infrastructure, hospitals, and things like that to really support that influx. What are some of the ways China can really encourage that and support this industry?
I think there's a few critical success factors that they will have to put in place in order to make the Hainan project work. One very important one is availability of drugs. So at the moment, many drugs which are used for treating things like cancer and other serious diseases in the States or in Europe are not available in mainland China. And that's one area where they will have to relax the regulations for Hainan, and they are in fact doing so under a pilot program, which is good news. They will also need to make sure that the general level of care, service and outcomes is equivalent, at least equivalent to what people might find if they're travelling overseas for treatment. Because these are not people who are short of cash. They're very happy to pay to travel overseas to get the best treatment. In order for those people to stay in China, the treatment is going to have to be top-notch.
Now, originally, a lot of people, when they think of Chinese medicine, they're perhaps thinking of coming there for traditional medicine, but we're also seeing people coming for things like surgeries and other sorts of Western medicines. How do you see that developing?
Yeah, that's right. So I think that there's a combination of a few things, and people who are interested in less or in need of less serious treatments are going to be more interested in the tourism aspects of their trip. So, you know, if you're just going for a health checkup or maybe some minor cosmetic surgery, you also want to spend a week or two on a beach, and that's going to be important to people who are thinking about visiting somewhere like Hainan. But at the same time, it's quite a long shot for Hainan to start attracting people who are currently going to Thailand or to Malaysia, for example, or to the United States. So I think the market will begin with overseas Chinese who are living perhaps in Southeast Asia, coming back to Hainan for treatment because it's their home country and you know, they speak the language and the culture is familiar and so on. And from there, Hainan can then build to a wider foreign audience.
And in terms of medical tourism's impact on other aspects of the economy, things like the hotels and the other infrastructure that comes with having a lot more tourists, what sort of impact could that have on the broader economy?
Yeah, very significant impact, in fact. So people who are traveling for health reasons or for medical reasons, on average, tend to spend much more than people who are traveling purely for a holiday or business reasons. So, for example, at the moment, the spend of people leaving China for medical tourism on medical care is around $7 billion a year. And their associated spend on travel and accommodation and so on is around $4 billion. So there's a huge spin-off effect from medical tourism.
And what do you see as some of the potential challenges to growing China's medical tourism industry?
I think as I said, the critical success factors will be things like availability of drugs, the availability of quality surgeons and doctors. So at the moment in China, there's a big shortage of doctors and qualified medical professionals to work even in the domestic industry. So the government is going to have to find a way either to allow or attract doctors from within China, the top doctors in China, to work in Hainan, or perhaps attract in foreign talent.